welcome to Flourish Computers Academy. In this lesson today, we are going to be talking about 4 major components to consider before you buy a laptop. In the past 2 lessons, I've talked about computer training for beginners. So we've done lesson 1 and then lesson 2. If you have not watched the previous lesson before this lesson 3, or we call it part 3, please go ahead and watch them. This lesson 3 is not just for beginners, it's for everybody, everyone that actually will need to buy a computer at one point or the other. So in this lesson, we are going to be talking about 4 major components to consider before you buy a laptop. So you ensure that you are buying the laptop that will be useful for you. So I encourage you to watch to the end as I explain to you the 4 major components that you must pay attention to before you buy a computer. Whether you are buying a new computer or you are buying a fairly used computer, you must pay attention to these 4 components. They are the most important components inside your computer that you need to actually consider before you buy. Now, the big question is this: what will you be using the laptop for? That is the most important question that you must answer for. This is not a function of who will use the laptop, but for what. What are you going to use it for? Whether you are buying it for yourself, you are buying it for a child, it does not matter. What matters most is what will the computer be used for. Now, in order to answer that question, I've categorized some of the answers that I've actually gotten in the time past into 3. So if you are going to buy it for gaming, you see people that want to run a software like Steam, Discord, application like Epic Game, Razer Cortex, and many other gaming software. So if you are going to buy a computer purposely for gaming, then there are components that must be a priority inside the computer before you shop for one. But if you are buying for 3D modeling as well, you are going to be installing software like Autodesk, AutoCAD, ArchiCAD, Adobe Dimension. You are going to be running some video editing software on your laptop. That's the second category. Also, there are components that you must pay attention to first. That must be your first priority when you are buying a laptop. And also, if you are going to be using it just for your normal Microsoft application, for browsing, you're going to be playing music or joining meetings on it as well. There are also components that must be the first priority before you buy a laptop. This is very important in order to ensure that the laptop you are buying is actually useful for the purpose to which you are buying it for. Before I dive deeper into those 4 components that I'm talking about and the usage category that I just explained now, let me request that you subscribe to this channel right away. Go ahead and click the subscription button and turn on your notification bell so you can be notified when I upload another video. I have series of videos coming on. The next video is going to be comparing HP and Dell laptop, because I've gotten a lot of questions: which laptop should I buy? Which brand of laptop should I buy? HP, should I buy a Dell laptop? I'm going to explain that in the next video and other videos that are coming on. So go ahead and subscribe now. Like this video and share with your loved one as well. And if you have not watched the previous videos I've done, the lesson 1 and 2, check the description part of this video. You are going to see the link to the previous video. Okay, let's go. There are so many components inside the computer, but there are 4 major components we are going to be discussing in this lesson. The first one among them is processor, which is also known as your CPU, Central Processing Unit. Then we have the graphic card, also known as your GPU, Graphic Processing Unit. We have the RAM, Random Access Memory, and then we have the drive. These 4 components, among all the other components that you have inside your computer, they are the most important component in your computer that determine the performance of your system. So depending on what you are going to use for, should the processor be the first priority, or the graphic card, or the RAM, or the drive? Then we are going to talk about that now based on the usage. Like I said, whether it's going to be for home use, it's going to be for gaming, it's going to be for 3D modeling or rendering. So whichever purpose you are buying the laptop for, which component should come first among these 4 components, then that is exactly what we are going to be looking at in the next slides. Now, let's start with gaming, category one. So if you are going to buy a laptop or you want to buy it for somebody who actually will be running gaming software application with the laptop, okay, the most important component to consider is the graphic card, the GPU. Among the four components that I listed above, the first thing to put into priority, the first one, the most important one, is your GPU. What is GPU? That is actually referred to as graphic processing unit. A graphic processing unit is a processor dedicated solely to a graphic processing operation. One of the main functions of the GPU is to lighten the load on the central processing unit, CPU. Remember, in the previous lesson, we discussed that CPU is actually referred to as central processing unit, which is the brain of the computer that perform the operation, the major operation inside your computer. All the computation task that you are doing with your computer is done by the CPU. Now, by the time you want to do graphic, gaming has to do with graphic, okay? So instead of the load to be run on your CPU, which is actually going to affect other operation of your system, then we have a graphic card that is actually designed to lighten the load on the CPU. So if you are going to do gaming, you must pay attention to your graphic card. Graphic card is the most important component that you need to consider. That does not make the other component of non-important, okay? But your first priority must be what is the size or what type of graphic card is running on this system that I want to buy, because I'm going to be doing gaming with the system. Now, there are two types of graphic cards. We have what we call integrated graphic card and a dedicated or discrete graphic card. When we talk about integrated graphic card, now it's a graphic card that is actually bonded on your motherboard, is together with your CPU. Okay, when we talk about dedicated or discrete graphic card, it is separated from the CPU. Okay, you can have it in form of a card that is plugged to the PCI if you are using a desktop. And the advantage of a dedicated graphic card is because it's actually that the function of the graphic card is totally separated from the CPU. So that makes your graphic card to be able to run effectively when you have a dedicated graphic card. So if you are buying a system that is mainly going to be for gaming, then it is important that you pay attention to dedicated graphic card. Okay, actually every system will come with a graphic card, but most of them is going to be integrated graphic card. But if you are going to do gaming, you now have to pay attention and ensure that the system is actually coming with a dedicated or what we refer to as discrete graphic card. If it's a dedicated graphic card, the performance is going to be far better than when it is integrated graphic card. Now, let's go to the next layer and talk about the main manufacturers of graphic card. There are so many manufacturers of graphic card, but in this lesson, we are going to focus on the major ones. Okay, the first one is NVIDIA graphic card. The next one is AMD, and then we have Intel graphic card. Not only these three are the manufacturer, but I'm going to focus on just these three. And now, how do you recognize NVIDIA graphic card? It usually has any of these in its name. If it's NVIDIA graphic card, when you pick up a system, just check the description of that system. If it starts with RTS, GTS, or Quadro, then that graphic card is NVIDIA graphic card. And in most cases, you are going to see them. If it is dedicated, you're going to have something like 2 gig, 4 gig, as if they are referring to a memory of the system. That is exactly how dedicated graphic card is described. So when you see RTS, GTS, Quadro as a part of the description of your system or the configuration, you know that the kind of graphic card that comes with that system is NVIDIA graphic card. So how do you recognize AMD graphic card? Is named with RX. Okay, the same way you have RTS, GTS, Quadro for NVIDIA, you have RX for AMD. That is how you are going to recognize the graphic card, that this graphic card is from AMD. Now, how do you recognize Intel graphic card unit, graphic processing unit, GPU? It has UHD in its name. Okay, if you check the description of the graphic card, if it comes with UHD, then you know this is Intel. Now, it's important for you to know that the higher the numerical identifier of the graphic card, the better the performance of that graphic card. So what do I mean by that? It means that if you are using Intel system, the UAD 630, I mean, if you are using Intel graphic card, the UAD 630 will perform better than UAD 620. So the higher the numerical identifier of your GPU, the better the performance. So RTS as well as numerical identifier, GTS, Quadro. So the higher the numerical identifier, the better the performance of your GPU. Now, how do you check your PC graphic card? Assuming you already have a computer, you are watching this video on your computer right now, and you're wondering or you want to check what kind of graphic card do you have on your system. How do you go ahead and check that? Because it's important for you to know how to check, especially if you are buying a fairly used PC, where the configuration that is written on the system may be actually different from the actual configuration that the system comes with. So the best way to do it, I'm going to show you how to go about that. But all you need to do first is press the Windows key on your keyboard, and then you type the device manager in the search bar. Or you open the device manager by simultaneously pressing the Windows and S key on your keyboard. Then you select device manager to open it. So this is the picture, how it's going to look like. Then I'm going to show you right now how we go about that on my system. So what you need to do if you are using Windows 10 like mine, come over here and then go over to device manager. Okay, from the start button, type device manager, then that will pop out. So when you get to your device manager, just go straight to display adapter. When you get to display adapter, you are going to see whatever type of graphic adapter that you have. On my system here, which is a Dell Latitude laptop, what I have there is Intel HD Graphics 620. So that's how to check your adapter to know the type of graphic adapter that you are using. Put your comment in the description section. Let me know what type of graphic card do you have. Do you have a dedicated graphic card, or do you have integrated graphic card? Then what type of graphic card do you have on your system? Let's go ahead. The best graphic card for gaming. Maybe somebody is asking, I want to buy a system. What graphic card should I go for? Should I go ahead and buy AMD graphic card? Should I buy NVIDIA? Should I buy Intel? Should I buy a system that comes with Intel graphic card? I should buy a laptop that comes with AMD graphic card. What type of graphic card should I buy? Now, when you are buying, consider NVIDIA discrete or dedicated graphic card when you are buying for gaming, because it performs much better. NVIDIA is my recommendation. That does not make AMD and Intel of non-performance, okay? But when it comes to the best performance for gaming, then go for NVIDIA dedicated graphic card. And the RTX series are better equipped to handle the modern design of AI and deep learning workload. So you may want to be specific about this when you are buying, that you are going for RTS NVIDIA dedicated graphic card because of the load, because of what it can do better than the other graphic card in the market. So this does not make the GTS and Quadro not worth your investment as well, as long as they are dedicated graphic card. Also remember, the higher the numeric identifier, the better the GPU is designed to perform. And also, the higher it is, also the more money you are going to pay. But definitely you are going to get value for your money. Let's look at category 2 usage, which has to do with 3D modeling. If you are going to use the laptop for 3D projects, video editing, rendering, the important component here is the processor. Okay, so your processor is the most important component when you are shopping for laptop. You need to consider what type of processor actually does the laptop has that will be good for you for the job that you want to do. However, you also need a good GPU for this task. Some recent system now uses GPU for rendering. But like I said, processor is your goal, the number one goal here. So the number two could be your GPU, but the number one you are looking at is what type of processor does this system has. Okay, now let's look at the processor itself. What is processor? A processor, which is also known as your central processing unit, CPU, is your computer's nerve center. I mean, where all the calculations necessary to run software applications are carried out. That is what the processor is all about. It's the brain of your computer. There are two major manufacturers of processor, Intel and AMD. These are the two major manufacturers of processor. And then processor has been categorized by Intel based on capacity as Core i3, Core i5, Core i7, and Core i9, while AMD has actually categorized its processor also based on capacity as Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, and Ryzen 9. And it's important for me to state here that i3, whether Core i3 or Ryzen 3, is an entry level processor. It's referred to what as an entry level processor, while i5 is mid range, i7 and i9 are high end processor. So you take note when you are buying an entry level, that is i3, i5, that's mid-range, i7 and i9, they are high-end processor. Now we're going to look at the detail of the description of the processor right now, because the processor is not just about i3, it's not just about i5, it's not just about i7 or i9. What about the other number attached to the processor? A lot of people really don't pay attention to this, and they are very important. The other numbers attached to your processor. So they are called numerical identifier. What do they mean? For example, Intel Core TN i7-8650U. This is actually the processor on my current system that I'm using to record this video. So I'm going to use this to explain to you, and then I will show you how to check also your processor to be able to see the full detail like I have on the screen here. You want to check what type of processor do you have? You already know that it's Core i7. What about the other information about the processor you want to know? Just come over to the start button like we did when we were checking for the graphic adapter, and then you type system information here. There are two ways of doing that, or so many other ways, but I'm just going to do that. This is simpler. Go to system information. From there you're going to see the detail about your processor. As you can see from here, this is Intel Core i7-8650U CPU, and this tells me about the speed, 1.90 gigahertz, and some other information that you have here. So that's how to check it. Alternatively, to check your system information, the type of processor that you have, you want to know the detail of the processor, you can as well go to my PC where you have my computer. Okay, go over to this PC. When you're under this PC, go to computer, and then from there go to system properties. Okay, when you get your system property, you're also going to see the detail of your processor as well as the RAM that are installed on your system on both sides, whether on the system information or from the display property under this PC or my computer. You are going to have the detail of your processor as well as your RAM. So you can see the same thing that we saw there, Core i7-8650U CPU. We are going to explain in detail what does this other number, what do they mean? Because in most cases, a lot of people just focus on is Core i7, is Core i5. What about the other data? They are very important, and I'm going to explain them further to you. Maybe on the label that is on your laptop or on your desktop, you may just see i3, Intel i3 or i5 or i7 there. But beyond that, there are more details that you need to pay attention to if you want to buy a laptop. So I'm going to explain this so that you check, and then you will know whether that laptop will be able to serve the purpose to which you want to buy it for. Remember, we said that if you are going to be doing video editing, you're going to be doing rendering, then your most important attention should be on the processor. Okay, now counting from the left. Now if you have this kind of processor that I have, now counting from the left, from this, the first and the second after the i7, right? If you are counting this numerical identifier that I have on the screen, you are counting from the left, then you have 8 here as the first one. Okay, in some cases the second one will be important. However, in my case it is not. Why? Because this is 8th generation. So this means that I have Core i7 8th generation. So you can have somebody who has a Core i7 and 10th generation. In that case, this instead of 8 is going to be 1 and 0. So that means it's 10th generation. A 10th generation Core i7 system is going to perform better than 8th generation. So by the time you get to the market, you can see a Core i7 that is cheaper than the other one. If you don't really know about this detail, you might be wondering what is going on, and then you jump at the cheaper one, not knowing that actually the performance is also lower compared to the other one. So that is why you cannot just focus on whether it's i7 or Ryzen 7, or it's going to be i5 or Ryzen 5. No, you need to check further what generation is that processor. Is it a second generation? Is it a third generation? Is it a fifth generation? Is it a sixth generation? Is it a seventh generation, eighth generation, ninth generation, or 10th generation processor? Now, beyond the numerical identifier that I just explained here, we also need to pay attention to the letter at the end of this numerical identifier. In my case here, the letter that you have here is letter U, right? In your case, it may be G1, it may be G7, it may be Y or H, whichever letter it is. I'm going to explain what they actually represent, both U, G1, G7, Y, and then or H. These are very important when you are choosing a laptop to buy. Now, processors with the letter U at the end are designed for low power consumption. Please take note of that. If you have letter U at the end of the numerical identifier, it means that that processor is designed for low power consumption. That means you can use it for a long time without being connected to the charger. Take note of that. You can use the laptop for a long time. The processor, the processing that is going on is not going to drain your battery faster. So you can use the laptop for a long time without actually connecting the laptop to the power socket. Now, processor with letter Y. Now, letter Y, if the identifier ends with letter Y, it consumes less power than even with letter U. So they are ultra low power consumption. Now, the one with letter Y are ultra low power consumption. So most of the systems that are designed with letter U, letter Y at the end are actually designed for a low task performing system, maybe a home use or a business use where you are not going to be running every application on them. So that is what those processors are designed for. Now, when we come to G1 and G7, if that is what your processor has, at the end, either G1 or G7, it indicates the level of the graphic card, with G1 less than G7, and both consume more power than U and Y. So you can now see how the this letter are very important as well for your battery consumption, because somebody might say my battery does not last. Yeah, your battery may not last. It could be because of the kind of processor that you have that is designed to run a powerful graphical application, gaming, and then in that case is going to actually tell on the lifespan of your battery. I mean the consumption of the power consumption or the power drainage of your battery. So, but processor with letter H is high performance, and such is found with rendering and gaming PC earlier discussed. So the summary of the processor specification here is that if you are having a G1 and G7 and then you have letter H at the end of the numerical identifier, they are actually designed for high performing system, high performing processor. You know, processors that are designed and expect that what the application you are going to be running there, they are going to be rendering, they are going to be gaming, okay, they are going to be video editing software. Those are the processors that are designed for that kind of application. G1, G7, and then H. Those ones are designed for high performance, and such they are found with rendering and gaming PC as earlier discussed for the gaming PC. Now, let's go into the third category. Now, in the third category, we are talking about office or home use. In this case, no 3D, no gaming. You are not interested in any of the previous two that we have discussed. All you want to use a laptop for, they are basic office application software. You're going to be doing your normal Excel, Microsoft Word, Outlook. You're going to be browsing the internet. You'll be doing the YouTube. They are actually low power consumption, and then you have a long battery life. In that case, what should be your consideration? I tell you, I think I'm going to advise you that it's going to be your pocket that will determine what laptop you should go for in this case. Now, there was a time someone actually bought a laptop, but unfortunately could not use a laptop for the purpose because he bought a laptop for home use and eventually want to run a video editing software on the laptop. The laptop does not have the processing capacity to be able to deliver what exactly is looking for. Eventually, it has to go for another laptop. Now, let's look at disadvantage of PC for gaming and rendering PC. Where, based on the discussion we have had so far, there are high CPU and GPU. So that means it leads to short battery life because of high power consumption. So anytime you are using a PC that are designed for gaming, that are actually consuming a lot of your CPU power, what you need to do is to get the PC plugged whenever you are using it. So you don't run it all the time on the battery. You get them plugged in. What happens when you don't plug them in? The CPU and the GPU performance will reduce in order to save power. That means you are not going to have the best from your CPU. You are not going to have the best from your GPU when you don't plug them to power while in use. But when you plug them to power and in use, the CPU and GPU will perform optimally as designed. Turn our attention to the third component, which is RAM, random access memory. This is another important component, and a lot of people are used to this component already. They have heard about it before, even though some may not really know what it is meant for. Now, let me take time to quickly explain to you what RAM is all about here. What is RAM used for? RAM is used for immediate data storage and retrieval. Okay, your RAM can process information significantly faster than data on a hard disk. To accomplish a specific task, computer operating system load data from the hard disk into the RAM to process it. When it is finished actively working on with the data, the next thing is that the computer convert it back into a long-term storage, which is actually your hard drive. So if you need to work on any application, and then as soon as you start your computer system and you go to either my document or you go to your desktop and then you open the application, what has happened that time is that the operating system will load the data from your hard disk into the RAM to process it. And then when you are done working on it and you click save, what happens is that the application that you have just worked on, the document will be moved back from the RAM back to your permanent storage, which is your hard drive. Now, when you close an application, the computer operating system take it out of its RAM. Every time you close an application, it will take it out of the RAM. Then that will free up more space on your RAM for more application to be able to work. So if you see somebody that open like Internet Explorer, or you open your Google Chrome and then you open so many tabs at the same time, all those tabs that you open, they are running on your RAM. If you don't have a high RAM, random access memory, your system will run slower based on the number of applications that you simultaneously open. Now, if you want to manage your system to run effectively when you don't have sufficient RAM, is to ensure that you don't do a lot of multitasking. Application you are not working on, you don't allow it to stay on. All you need to do is to close those applications, or you restart your system often in order to close the task that you are not currently working on. Because as long as they are running and your system has not shut down, what happens is that they are going to be running on your random access memory. And this is also what happens when somebody is working on a document and you have not saved the document and there is no autosave and there is a power failure, you lose the document that you are working on. Okay, so RAM keep data easily accessible to your processor. Another way I can describe RAM is when you have a file on your desk that you are working on. You have pulled out the file from the drawer and you have put them on your table. They are closer to your desk. You can reach out to them quickly and work on them. That is exactly what RAM also does. It makes the document available faster and quicker for you. So RAM matters to the speed of your computer. The higher the RAM that you have, I've explained how the RAM is measured. You can have it in either 2 gig, you can have it in 4 gig, you can have it in 8 gig, you can have RAM in 16 gig, you can have in 12 gig, and so on and so forth. So it matters to the speed of your computer. Based on the explanation I've given so far, you can see that the higher the RAM, the more application you are going to run, be able to run simultaneously without actually impacting on the performance of your system. So you may ask, how much memory do you really need? Well, the important thing is that the more RAM your computer has, the faster it will run. That is just the baseline. Now, let's talk about the last component that you need to consider when you are buying a laptop. It is your drive. That is your permanent storage for your system, for the application, for whatever job you are doing. The drive is also important to the performance of your system. Now, there are two technology of drive that is available. We have what you call ADD, hard disk drive, and SSD, solid state drives. Okay, the HDD is old technology, and the latest technology is SSD. SSD are generally faster and more reliable than ADD, but they are also more expensive. Okay, the performance of your system is going to be great if you are running a system with SSD that has a very good processor as well as the RAM. It will perform far better than a system that is running HDD, the same memory and the same processor with the system that is running SSD. So that is why SSD is very important. It's the latest technology, and it's also enhanced the performance of your system. So if you need fast boot and load time, you want your system improvement, overall performance, then you go with SSD. Like I said, it is a little bit more expensive than a system with ADD, but the value you are going to get from it actually worth the price. The only disadvantage is that you are not going to have as high storage space that you may desire as you will have in your HDD. You can have a system with 2 terabytes in ADD. It might be a little bit challenging to get a system that has 2 terabytes of SSD. However, like I said, your workload will actually determine, because a 512 SSD is also a lot of space. Okay, if your task is not really so much like that, I mean in terms of storage at the end of the day, or you have an external backup, then I will recommend SSD. Okay, whether you are using it for gaming, you are using it for 3D modeling, you are using it for home use, irrespective of wherever you are going to use a laptop for. If you have not bought and you are just planning to buy, then look out for a system with SSD. You are going to have the best of value for your money. Now, to wrap up this course, let me conclude by just bring together everything that we have talked about so far in this lesson. We've talked about gaming, that if you are going to use the system for gaming, the component you need to pay attention to, most importantly, the number one is GPU, and it has to be discrete or dedicated GPU. The second component is your CPU. I will recommend Core i7 CPU. Now, what generation? From 8, 9, 10 generation, that should be fine. And then the third component should be 16 gig plus, from 16 gig and above. If you are going to use the system for gaming, it should be from 16 gig and above. And then the fourth component is their SSD. Don't go for HDD. I recommend SSD, and minimum to be 512 GB. Okay, if you are going to use the laptop for 3D modeling or rendering, the number one recommendation for me is CPU. Minimum Core i7 from 8 generation, 10 generation, the best. Number two is your GPU. That could either be discrete or integrated. Number three, minimum of 16 gig is recommended. And then SSD as number four. I will also recommend 512 GB with probably some external device for backup, depending on the size of your file or data as time goes on. And then for number three, usage, home or office. If you are going to buy the laptop and you are going to use it in the home or office with a light application, the first recommendation is your CPU. It could be from Core i3 to Core i7. Remember, we said that Core i3 is actually the baseline. The mid-range is Core i5, and Core i7 and i9 to be high-end CPU on your PC. The number two is your RAM, which could go from 4 gig to 16 gig or above, depending on the task that you have to perform. And the number three is going to be SSD, okay, or HDD, depending on your budget. If you have the budget for SSD, you can go for it. If you don't, then you go with traditional HDD. And then the fourth component is GPU. So this is a way to wrap up this lesson and to summarize it. Now, if you have not subscribed to this channel, then I think that's the only thing I'm requesting you to do, okay, in order to encourage me to continue with this training free of charge. Go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And if you have any comment, please don't hesitate to drop it. So that's the only thing I'm asking you to do. Go ahead and click the subscription button now. Thank you.